God's grace invites us to come home, no matter how far we've strayed. Home can be the place of renewed hope, the beginning or realization of its fruitfulness towards all. Physical, spiritual, and emotional transformation begins when we accept the invitation to return, to be faithful, and to be renewed. There's something special about coming home, isn't there? I remember once coming home after being away for a while. You know that feeling. You open the door, suddenly everything feels right. The dog comes excitedly over to you, tail wagging, jumping up on you. Family is smiling and happy that you're there, hopefully. The familiar atmosphere can be very relaxing and comforting. It's not that home is perfect, but it's relaxed, casual. It's home. It's a place where you can exhale and just be. But there's another kind of coming home too. Not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. We've all experienced times when we felt distant from the people we love, or even from God. Maybe it was something we did. Maybe life just got hard. Maybe we drifted away. Coming back after that kind of separation can be a little scary. Doubts and questions arise in your mind. Will I be welcomed? Will there be grace? Well, that's the story of the prodigal son. It's a story that reminds us that no matter how far we've wandered, God, represented by a parent, spouse, sibling, a child, friend, or family member, God is always waiting with open arms to welcome us back. In Luke 15, Jesus tells a story that's all too familiar to many of us. A father has two sons. The younger son is restless. He wants to see the world, live his own life, make his own decisions. So he asks for his share of the inheritance, which was as good as saying, "I wish you were dead, Dad." But the father gives him what he asked for and lets him go. The younger son takes off to a far country, living it up, doing everything under the sun that he shouldn't be doing until the money runs out. Then famine strikes, and he finds himself financially broke, emotionally beaten down, spiritually broken. Desperate, he takes a job feeding pigs, the lowest of the low for a Jewish man. Remember, that association with pork, that's a no-no. Yet, he's so hungry that even the pig's food starts to look good. And as disgusting as it is, maybe even the pigs start to look appetizing. And then comes the moment where a mental crash reaches its pinnacle. Pride is gone, doubts overwhelm, and the only thing he thinks he has left is wallowing in pity and begging on his knees. The son thinks to himself, "I'll get up. I'll go to my father." He rehearses a little speech in his head. "Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm not worthy to be called your son. Just make me a hired man." But before he can even finish his speech, his father sees him from a distance, filled with compassion, and runs to meet him. This, my friends, is not a dignified, slow walk. The father runs, wraps his arms around his son, and kisses him. No lecture, no conditions, just love. Anyone knowing the father is probably not surprised that he throws a feast, a homecoming party. The son who is lost is home again. But the story doesn't end there. The older son hears the music, asks what's going on, and when he learns about the celebration, he's furious. "I've been here the whole time, working hard, and you've never thrown me a party." This kind of reminds me of the story of Cain and Abel. Cain was furious of God's acceptance of Abel's offering, but is indignant when God does not favor his offering. one son competing with the other, but the other son is only doing what is natural. The father reminds him that everything he has belongs to him, just as God reminded Cain, sin is at the door, ready to pounce upon you, but you can master it, control it, and overcome it. As Cain did to Abel, I'm sure the older brother wanted to eliminate his younger brother, for at this moment, he did not feel like he was his brother's keeper. You see, the story of the prodigal son, it's not about fairness. It's about grace. It's about celebrating when someone who was lost finds their way home. Now, we don't know, as Paul Harvey puts it, the rest of the story, but we can assume the death of a brother did not occur as furious rage was overcome by the same grace that the father had welcoming a presumed son that was dead back into the fold. This grace overshadowed and calmed the older brother. Lessons learned, grace revealed, revelation of what fruitfulness can do to the inner core of a person through love, trust, and obedience to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear all points of the story. In Joshua 5, we find the Israelites at a major turning point in their story. After 40 long years of wandering in the wilderness, they finally arrive at the edge of the Promised Land. It's a homecoming of sorts, not back to Egypt, but into the land God had promised their ancestors. This is a moment bursting with hope and renewal and transformation. But it's also a moment of letting go of the past and stepping into something new. God says to Joshua, "Today, I've rolled away from you the disgrace of Egypt." Now that's a powerful statement. God isn't only bringing them to a new physical place, God is healing their story, taking the shame and pain of the past. For 40 years they survived on manna, just enough for each day. But now they entered the land. They eat the fruit of Canaan. No more manna, no more wilderness wandering. They're stepping into abundance. They're stepping into a new life of possibility. The fields are now fruitful. The promise is being realized in the flesh and bone. Now, there's a deep connection here to the story of the prodigal son. Just like the Israelites, the younger son has wandered far from home, carrying his own disgrace, his failure, his brokenness, his hunger. And just like the Israelites, his story changes the moment he decides to return. Both stories are about coming home, whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual. Both are about experiencing new beginnings. And both remind us that transformation isn't just about geography. It's truly about relationship. The Promised Land wasn't a new physical home for Israel. It was a place where they could reestablish the relationship with God, living in trust and partnership and attempting to keep it with those they call family of God. In our lives, coming home to God is about more than returning to a place or following a set of rules. It's about reconnecting with the one who has been inviting us into wholeness all along. In process theology, we talk a lot about God's ongoing invitation to transformation. God isn't a distant, unchanging figure sitting on a throne, waiting for us to get everything right before offering grace. Friends, it's not pay to play. It's not perfection before possibility. God is deeply involved in our lives, calling, persuading, inviting us towards new possibilities at every moment. Every experience, every choice we make is an opportunity for transformation. Grace, in this understanding, isn't a one-time transaction. It's not something you get once and hold on to forever. Grace is a living, dynamic relationship. It's God continually luring us to create what J. McDaniel calls the best possible outcome for the situation at hand. Even when we wander, God keeps inviting us back. Oh, not with punishment, but with open arms and fresh possibilities. When the prodigal son decides to return home, he's responding to that ongoing invitation. He doesn't know how he'll be received. He doesn't expect forgiveness or restoration. But the Father's response is a beautiful picture of God's open and relational love. A love that doesn't keep score, doesn't withhold grace, but celebrates the moment we choose to return. In many ways, the Father in this story is a model for us. We're called to live out that same kind of grace in our own relationships, welcoming others with open arms, without conditions or judgment. That's not always easy. Sometimes it feels unfair, just like it did to the older brother. Fortunately, God's love isn't about fairness. It's about that abundant grace. There's enough grace for everyone. In United Methodist theology, we talk about grace in various ways, 3 of which are prevenient, justifying, and sanctifying. The prodigal son story highlights all 3. In very simplified terms, prevenient grace is the love that initiated and never stopped calling him home, even when he was far away. Justifying grace is that moment of turning, when he decides to return to his Father's house. And sanctifying grace is what follows, the ongoing work of rebuilding, healing, and restoring the relationship. Margaret Suhaki writes, both process and Wesleyan theologies assume an essential responsiveness, and therefore responsibility in creaturely existence. Wesley terms it resistible grace. Process speaks of the power of the becoming occasion to subvert the influence of God. And both Process and Wesley, grace is enabling. It is truly possible to respond positively to the grace of God. But grace is not forcing. It is truly possible to resist grace. Resistance cannot send God away, as if somehow God could no longer be present to the individual, but resistance builds up cumulative roadblocks that hinder the grace of God. Friends, that's why God's grace is always working, drawing us towards wholeness. When we respond to that invitation, it doesn't just change our relationship with God. It transforms how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we live in the world. We see this kind of grace in our everyday lives. Think of someone who's had a rough patch. Maybe they've lost a job, struggled with addiction, or made some mistakes. Yet their community gathers around them, offers support, and helps them rebuild their life. That's grace in action. Or consider a church that opens its doors to people who felt unwelcome elsewhere. A church that says, come as you are. You belong here. We won't reject you. We won't deny you. That's the kind of radical hospitality God calls us to. So what about you? Where have you felt distant from God or from others? What would it look like for you to come home? Maybe it's time to practice forgiveness, both giving it and receiving it. Maybe it's time to let go of the shame that's been holding you back and embrace a new beginning. Here's the challenge for us as the body of Christ. How can we offer that kind of radical grace to others? How can we be the kind of church that runs to meet people with open arms? God's arms are always open. The church's arms should be as well. All we have to do is take that first step in grace and love and forgiveness and into Christ's transformation. May it be so. Will you pray with me? Gracious and loving God, through Jesus we thank you for your open arms and your endless grace. Give us the courage to return to you when we feel lost. Help us to offer that same grace to others so that we may be a place of welcome, healing, and joy. Amen.